Hello, everyone. My name is Derek Smith from masterfulpersuasion.com, and I want to welcome you to this course on the psychology of persuasion. Now, I consider myself an expert at persuasion, and I'll talk about why in just a minute. But as you can see on the current slide, I'm often on television. I'm called upon as an expert on a variety of things, mainly cybersecurity, persuasion, negotiation, those type of things. I've spoken around the country. I continue to speak around the country, and I continue to be called upon as an expert. So I just wanted to share that to establish this and where we're going to go as far as the psychology of persuasion. Now, what's more important is not about me, it's about what's in it for you. And no matter what you do on a daily basis or what you want to be in life, be it real estate investment or investment banking or acting or you name it, even a teacher in a classroom, you're going to need persuasion and negotiation tactics and techniques. So my goal is to increase your awareness of the impact you have on others and help you develop practical skills and techniques to become a more proficient influencer and persuader in your daily life. Now, why am I qualified to do this? Well, first of all, I want to say I'm a former federal agent. And what does that have to do with persuasion? Well, I spent 18 years trying to persuade others to give me the information that I needed to solve a crime and to convince me whether they took place in that crime or they didn't, for me to come to some type of logical conclusion about it. I was a federal agent with several federal agencies as well as with two military agencies, the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force. Also during that time, I worked in military intelligence with the U.S. Army, and I did intelligence with the Air Force as well. So the Army trained me to be an Army interrogator, and it also trained me to gather information as intelligence. And in the Air Force, I was an intelligence agent in places like Turkey and other places around the world. I went to the Defense Intelligence Agency to learn the Turkish language. I've also written 4 books. I'm in the process of writing my 4th book now. My 4th book is called Masterful. Right now, the working title is Masterful Persuasion and Negotiation. And my goal is to teach you all the type of things I'm going to teach you in this course and the things I've learned over my 35-plus year career. The other 3 books are not about persuasion, but I had to persuade people to allow me and to pay me to write these books. Next, I served in 3 military services, the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy, and I told you a little bit about that already. I've also obtained 8 college degrees. So I have 3 master's degrees, I have a bachelor's degrees, 3 associate's degrees. I did my doctoral study in organizational leadership and conflict resolution. And that's important because organizational leadership is all about convincing others to do what you need them to do in order for your business to succeed. And in conflict resolution, it's all about resolving conflicts using negotiation and persuasion strategies. And I've earned 5 black belts in various martial arts. So this is all important just to demonstrate one thing, and that I'm an achiever. I try to achieve things that I want you to achieve as well. Let me just take a step back for a moment and tell you that in high school, although I always had good grades, in high school I became interested in girls and basketball and other things. So I was kicked out of my high school in 10th grade. And this high school is one of the top high schools in Chicago. Well, I immediately went to night school and I graduated on time. But it was night school, and I was number 2 in the school, so I was class salutatorian, but again, it was night school. But I saw the importance of education, so I did, while in the military, go on to pursue all those other degrees that we talked about. So with all this experience that I have, I think that I'm well qualified to talk to you about negotiation and persuasion techniques and to share what I know with you. And you can take it, and hopefully you can do something with it, and it'll be valuable to you. Now, moving on into what we're going to learn here, what we're going to talk about, persuasion is a form of social influence. So by definition, it is the process of guiding yourself or another person or other people towards the adoption of an attitude, idea, or action by rational and symbolic, though not always logical means. That means that although it may not always be logical to them, our goal is to convince them of what it is we're trying to sell or what it is we're trying to get across to that person, even if it doesn't make logical sense to them. Now, we are confronted by persuasion in our everyday lives. So no matter what it is that you do on a daily basis, you're persuading someone and you're trying to negotiate with someone, or you're being persuaded by someone. Producers of food products want us to buy their goods. Movie studios want us to buy their latest films. Gym shoe companies want us to buy their gym shoes. Sports companies want us to watch their programs, and on and on and on. So for this reason, it is easy to overlook how outside sources influence us because we're so bombarded with this that it becomes second nature. But through this course and through the other teachings that I have on my masterfulpersuasion.com website, you'll begin to recognize these things and they won't be used against you, and you'll be able to use them in order to do the things you need to do, to persuade the folks you want persuaded. Now, as persuasion is such a useful influence, the techniques have been studied since ancient times, although social psychologists formally began studying the techniques in the early 20th century. That's when they started recording and writing it down and looking at how these techniques can be used to our advantages. The aim of persuasion is to convince the target to internalize their argument and accept the attitude as part of their core belief system. In order for us to persuade people, we have to convince them that this is part of their core belief system. Now, this course that I have is based on research. Okay, this is not just Derek's ideas. Everything that I'm giving you today is going to be based on solid research. Okay, and I'm going to name some of that research and give you some of my resources and things as we go on through the course. But as discussed in an article as discussed in an article by Kendra Cherry, there are only a few highly effective persuasion techniques. Other methods that people use include the use of punishment and rewards and positive and negative expertise and moral appeal, among others. But we're going to talk about some of those persuasion techniques. A lot of the writers out there have their own ideas, the laws of persuasion, the psychology of persuasion, those type of things. But if we learn some of these solid techniques, we will be good at persuasion. Now, the first one of those techniques I want to talk about is the need for you to create a need. So this method involves creating a need or appealing to a previously existing need. Tony Robbins, one of my favorite authors and tape makers or whatever you want to call it, he talks about a need for people to avoid pain. So it's about pain and pleasure, and that humans would do almost anything to avoid pain. So one of the things that we try to do is create a need. And that need hopefully is going to demonstrate to them that you need something in order to avoid that pain, and get that pleasure that you want. And then our job is to convince them how we can help them get whatever it is they need. So if you're a car salesman, I used to be a car salesman. And when I was a car salesman, I was a top car salesman at our organization here in Maryland. It was called Oarsman Chevrolet, my first month. And I remained the top salesman in the subsequent months that I was there. Okay, so this type of persuasion appeals to a person's fundamental needs for shelter, for love, for self-esteem, and for self-actualization. That means getting everything that you think that you should have out of life. The second thing is we want to appeal to social needs. So this effective method of persuasion appeals to the individual's needs to be prestigious, popular, or similar to others. Now, this method of persuasion is illustrated in many television commercials. Viewers are encouraged to purchase advertised items in order to be like others. You want to have that person's car, a house like this person. You want to play basketball like another person, or whatever it may be, or to be liked, or to be like a well-known or well-respected person. Television commercials are a massive source of exposure to persuasion. If you consider that estimates claim that the average British viewer watched a record of more than 4 hours of TV a day, based on the first 3 months of 2010, 48 ads a day was a result. Number 3 is use loaded images and words. Persuasion often makes use of loaded words and images. Advertisers are all too aware of the power behind the use of positive words. Hence the motive behind phrases such as new and improved, and all natural, or the best, or no sugar added, or whatever it may be. Those loaded images and those words are going to try to induce some type of feeling and some type of behavior out of you. Now, this is just one example of how persuasion can be used in everyday advertisements. An interesting experiment is to view a random television program or commercial for half an hour or so, and then note every example of persuasive advertising that you see. It can be quite astounding when you take a look at something like this, how much you're bombarded with this on a daily basis. Now, Robert Cialdini which is one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite books, wrote a book on persuasion. It's called The Psychology of Persuasion. And in it, he defines 6 weapons of influence. And I have other videos, if you go search for them on my YouTube channel, that talks about those 6 weapons of influence. But I'm going to give them to you again here. The first one is reciprocity. People are often inclined to return a favor once it's given to them. So consider persuasiveness of free samples used in marketing and advertising. People give you something free, and then they kind of expect something in return. In his conferences, Robert Cialdini uses the example of Ethiopia providing thousands of dollars in humanitarian aid to Mexico following the 1985 earthquake. Although Ethiopia itself was suffering a crippling famine and civil war at the time, Ethiopia was reciprocating for the support Mexico provided when Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1937. So they felt like they owed them, so they had to give back. Now, we use this reciprocity all the time. When someone does something for you or give you something, you feel kind of obligated to do something in return for them. And that's what reciprocity, the law of reciprocity, is all about. The next one he talks about is commitment and consistency. So if people commit to what they believe is right, whether orally or in writing, they're more than likely to honor their commitment, even when the original motivation is subsequently removed. For example, during the purchase of a house, if the price is suddenly raised at the last moment, the chances are the buyer will still continue with the purchase because they have already decided to buy that house. Okay, there's an article by Noah Goldstein that you can go out and search for, and they'll talk about this type of thing. But if you commit to something, you say you're going to do it, you kind of feel obligated to do it. Even if you tell a friend you're going to help them move next weekend, you kind of feel obligated to do that. So the second law is commitment and consistency. The third is social proof. So if people see others doing something, they are more likely to do that themselves. So in one experiment, one or more participants would look skyward, causing bystanders to look skyward in order to see what they were looking at. Interestingly enough, at one point, the experiment was aborted because so many people were looking up, they stopped traffic. In this way, persuasion can be seen as similar to conformity. So basically what this means is that you want to do the same things you see other people doing. You don't want to stand out from the crowd. You kind of want to conform. And when I say you, I mean the majority of people kind of want to conform to what everybody else is doing. So you can use this as part of your negotiation or persuasion strategy if you want someone to do something. We do this by mirroring and changing behavior and kind of starting to lead the behavior. And once people are following you with their behavior and you're getting yes from them, then they're going to start buying whatever it is that you may be selling. Next is authority. So people have a tendency to obey authority figures, even when asked to perform unpleasant acts. And Cialdini uses examples of the Milgram experience and the My Lai massacre. So you can go look those up to get more information. But basically, I started off by telling you some of the things that I had accomplished in life. I'll say this, many humans want to be led, want leadership. If you see that someone else has done something in life, you want to do it as well. Look at the influence that people like Oprah Winfrey have on people. You know, just about anything she touches turns to gold because people rely on what she say as, I'll just say, the gospel, and then she has the ability to persuade and influence others to do what it is that she wants them to do. And that's why she's a billionaire now. Number 5 is liking. So people are more easily persuaded by people that they like. So Cialdini uses the example of the marketing of Tupperware, which would now be known as viral marketing. People were more likely to buy the product if they liked the person that was selling it to them. Also discussed was the higher success of more attractive people. And it was found that in general, more aesthetically pleasing people tended to use persuasive influence more effectively over others. If you look at the advent right now of YouTube, many of you listening to this program follow certain people on YouTube because of their charismatic attitude or what they've accomplished or whatever it is. But the ones that you like, you're more likely to go out and buy from them, and they're going to have a more successful future because of that. When I sold cars, as you see in this picture, when I sold cars, first I would try to get the people to like me. And I will do that by finding or building rapport with them. If they're ever in the military, I talk about the military. I'll talk about their favorite sports teams, whatever it may be, before we even start talking about a car. I want them to like me first. If they didn't like me, they weren't going to do business with me. So keep that in mind. You want to be liked by the persons that you're trying to persuade. Next is scarcity. So demand is generated by perceived scarcity. This is seen by offers that are said to be available for a limited time only. So even if you go into a store and you see a car that you like, and you say you want to think about it until tomorrow or next week, whatever it may be, the salesman is going to talk to you about whatever price they have been a limited time offer, or they're going to talk about how the car is not going to be here tomorrow because they have another person that came in and looked at it this morning and they said they're going to come back this afternoon, or whatever it may be. But scarcity builds a sense of timing, a sense of I need to do this now in a person, and it's going to get you that sale. So again, this is a tool to have in your belt to use to persuade folks to do what it is you want them to do. So there's another favorite book of mine that I have called The Art of Woo. And in the book, The Art of Woo by Richard Schell and Mario Musa, there's a 4-step approach to strategic persuasion, and I'm going to describe it here in this slide. So persuasion, again, is described as the ability to win others over, not to defeat them. Now, keep in mind, when I talk about persuasion and all my books and videos and all that, I talk about win-win situations. We want both people to go away happy, okay? Or else you really haven't done a good job. Our goal is not to have a customer one time. Our goal is to continue to have a customer come to us over and over again. For this reason, they state that it is essential to see the subject from numerous angles in order to anticipate the reaction of others to a proposal. So step 1 in that is to survey your situation. The persuader must analyze his situation, what his or her goals are, and the challenges she or he faces with the organization or the person that they're trying to persuade. Step 2 is to confront the 5 barriers. 5 obstacles are identified as posing the greatest risk to successful influence: relationships, credibility, communication mismatches, belief systems, interests, and needs. Step 3 is to make your pitch. To justify a decision, people require solid reasons, although many decisions are based on the individual's intuition. Also involved in this step is presentation skills. I mean, part of being a good salesman is to have good presentation skills and to know your product that is that you're trying to sell. So you make your pitch and you make it in a convincing manner, and that's step 3 towards getting what you want as far as persuasion negotiation is concerned. Step 4 is secure your commitments. It is vital to tackle politics both at the individual and organizational level in order to safeguard the long-term success of your goal, whatever that goal may be. Okay? I talked about commitments before. It's important to be consistent when you make commitments and stick to them so you can be seen as that credible person that I talked about and build good relationships in order to get whatever it is that you're trying to get. Propaganda and persuasion are closely related. Now, propaganda involves a concentrated set of messages aimed at influencing the behavior and opinions of large numbers of people. Propaganda focuses on the presentation of information with the sole purpose of influencing an audience. Therefore, the information provided is not impartial. So you see, propaganda is a form of persuasion, but we want to be careful because we're looking for positive outcomes when we do this. Often, effective propaganda is not completely truthful, but based on carefully selected facts to encourage a particular viewpoint. Loaded messages are also used in order to produce an emotional response as opposed to rational responses to the information presented. The desired result is a change in the cognitive narrative of the subject and the target audience. The term propaganda was first used in 1622 when Pope Gregory XV established the Sacred Congregation for Propagating the Faith. Just as it is now, propaganda was used in this instance to convince large numbers of people about the validity of a certain idea. Now, how is this important to you all? Now, I'm not saying be inaccurate, but this teaches us that when we try to convince someone of something, we should have at least some good supporting facts to try to push forward our truth or our belief or our idea about what it is we're trying to convince them of. Remember, I told you we're looking at people's core values when they make decisions. So we need to have something on our side that's going to help clarify or guide what those core values should be. All right, so that's kind of a quick overview, a quick lesson in the psychology of persuasion. Now I want to give you some useful tools that you can use to learn even more about persuasion. Now, number 1, I'm going to tell you to go to my website. Again, that's www.masterfulpersuasion.com, where I update it all the time with new information and videos on persuasion. And it also leads you to my YouTube channel as well. You can also look at the Journal of Consumer Research. You can look at the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, the Organization of Behavior and Human Decision Processes, the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, and the Journal of Retailing. See, because this is very important that you understand that persuasion is about psychology. It's about convincing people to do the things that you want them to do. Right? So you have to understand people and how they think in order to be a good persuader and negotiator. Some useful books are Persuasion, Psychological Insights and Perspective by Timothy C. Brock and Melanie C. Green. Another one is Psychology of Persuasion, How to Persuade Others to Your Way of Thinking by Kevin Hogan. Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, which I talked about today. That's one of my favorite. The Art of Woo, Using Strategic Persuasion to Sell Your Ideas by G. Richard Schell and Mario Musa, another one of my favorites. And Psychology of Persuasion, Psychology of Emotions, Motivation and Actions by Janice Sapo and Andur Magyar. And there are many, many books on persuasion, so there's so many things that you can pick up and read, and I say that you should, and articles and books and watch some videos and things like that as well. Experts. Now, I have myself as number one on the list. Again, look for my book, Masterful Persuasion and Negotiation, coming soon. Also, visit my blog and everything else. I already talked that to death, so I think you know. Michael Lee, persuasion expert, author of How to Be an Expert Persuader in 20 Days or Less. You can find a link to this one on my website at masterfulpersuasion.com, and you can go out and Google Michael Lee as well. Robert Cialdini, again, president of Influence at Work, the author of that book that I told you about, and he's a professor of psychology at Arizona State University. Also, we have Dwayne Cunningham, persuasion, influence, and sales trainer at Dwayne Cunningham & Associates, the world's leading persuasion expert, and there are many more. Just go out there again and Google experts in persuasion. I just wanted to give you a few to get you started. There's also blogs. Again, my blog at the top. Money Smarts, book review, influence and psychology of persuasion. Simoleon Sense, I think that's how it's pronounced. Influence and persuasion, how to keep someone with you forever. Must read for you. And changingminds.org, resisting persuasion, are some of my recommendations. There's also many, many articles on the web. Some I recommend is Covert Persuasion Techniques, the Name Method of Persuasion, and IQ Matrix, the Psychology of Persuasion. And I have many references that I use to put this together for you, and there are many more out there. So again, this is Derek Smith, and again, I want to thank you for being part of my presentation. So again, this is Derek Smith, and I want to thank you for your attention and your time, for getting to know a little bit about persuasion in this presentation on the psychology of persuasion. I hope you go out and visit my website and my YouTube, and I hope that I can share much more of the information that I've gathered with you in future recordings and future talks and future books and things like that. So again, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.